New York, a city that never sleeps, but hides stories no one imagines. And it's precisely here that something so unexpected happened, leaving a millionaire speechless in front of everyone. The title of our video says it all. Millionaire forces Maid to play piano to humiliate her, but her talent leaves him speechless. But can you imagine the intensity of this scene? Richard Stone, a tycoon accustomed to ruling, believed he could turn anyone into a laughingstock. On the other side was Maria Alvarez, a quiet, humble, seemingly invisible employee, who harbored a secret that would change everything. And before we dive into this story, I urge you, subscribe to the channel now, like it, and get ready, because what you're about to hear may change your perspective on life. Stay with me until the end, because the twist is simply unbelievable. Imagine New York on a gala night. The lights of Times Square shine as if they're trying to compete with the stars in the sky, while the skyscrapers reflect the arrogance and power of those who believe they hold the world in their hands. Between limousines gliding down the avenues and champagne glasses clinking in luxurious ballrooms, there's an invisible line separating two worlds, those who have everything and those who are treated as if they were nothing. It is in this setting that we find Richard Stone, a household name in business circles. A construction magnate with properties spread throughout the city, he was accustomed to applause and flattery. For him, every social gathering was not just a celebration, but a stage to reaffirm his superiority. His mansion in the heart of Manhattan was more than a home. It was a monument to his ego. Its rooms were decorated with crystal chandeliers, original paintings by renowned artists, and a Steinway grand piano positioned in the center of the room as a symbol of status. Not art, but in this same space where luxury overflowed, nearly invisible figures moved about. Among the discreet waiters, cooks hidden behind kitchen curtains, and drivers waiting on the icy streets, there was also Maria Alvarez, the young maid. The daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants, Maria knew New York not through the glitter of its storefronts, but through the weight of overdue bills and the daily struggle to support her ailing mother. While Richard flaunted what he had, Maria lived in the shadows of the city that never sleeps. She walked the crowded subway every day, saw people rushing around who never looked away, and yet she carried within herself something no one could imagine. New York, for her, was not the city of dreams. It was the stage of resistance, where the small became great only when they decided not to bow down. And herein lies the first shattering of expectations. While many think this is just another story about inequality, what's about to unfold shows that even in the center of power, the improbable can shine. Because when two worlds collide, that of arrogance and that of humility, it's not always money that wins. And this is where we need to pay attention. The city that seemed to belong only to men like Richard Stone also had room to reveal hidden talents in people like Maria Alvarez. But for that to happen, someone would have to tempt fate. Richard Stone wasn't just a millionaire. He was the embodiment of a kind of power measured not in numbers, but in gestures of superiority. For him, every word was a sentence, every look an order. Accustomed to dominating meetings, deciding the future of companies, and dictating the fate of hundreds of employees, Richard believed the world revolved around his will. In the luxurious ballrooms of Manhattan, his presence was almost theatrical. Guests watched him with the same attention they pay to a star in a show. But there was a difference. Richard sought applause not for his grandeur, but for the fear he instilled. Those around him knew that to disagree with him was to become the target of his contempt. This behavior, however, hid something greater. Richard carried within himself an insatiable need to prove his superiority. It wasn't enough to have wealth, imported cars, yachts, and properties. What fueled him was the feeling that he could humiliate anyone at any time. It was almost as if humiliation were a private sport, a ritual that reaffirmed his position at the top of the social ladder. And here's a thought: how many times have we seen people who, even having everything, still need to belittle others to feel great? It's as if the emptiness in their hearts was so deep that no amount of fortune could fill it. Richard was this walking void, always searching for a new target to reaffirm his supposed greatness, and there was something curious about his behavior. Instead of choosing rivals on his own level, he targeted the most vulnerable. He never humiliated his powerful business partners. On the contrary, it was with them that he cultivated a false courtesy. But with waiters, drivers, employees, these were the ones chosen for his cruelty. After all, they were too small to fight back. They had no voice to defend themselves. And perhaps, deep down, that was what he needed. Silent targets so his vanity could resonate unopposed. On this particular night, as he circulated through the ballroom filled with distinguished guests, Richard seemed even more willing to display his power. The grand piano in the center of the room wasn't just there as a decorative piece. For him, it was also a silent weapon, a reminder that money wasn't enough to buy it. You needed talent to make it speak. And talent, in his view, was something simple people could never possess. But fate, ironic as ever, was already plotting its turn of events. While Richard mentally prepared his next display of arrogance, he had no idea that it would be precisely there, in front of everyone, that his ego would encounter the most unexpected obstacle. Because if money buys the piano, the heart that knows how to play it is not for sale. And it is precisely here that another character begins to gain ground in this story. Maria Alvarez, the waitress who had been discreetly serving glasses of wine that night, was about to be dragged into the center of that spectacle. And the stage Richard believed he dominated would, in a few moments, no longer be his. While the guests chatted animatedly, toasting their success and appearances, Maria Alvarez moved around the room as if invisible. To many there, she was just another employee among many, someone who went unnoticed as part of the scenery. She carried a tray of crystal glasses, balancing each step with the delicacy of someone who learned from an early age not to attract attention. But Maria's silence wasn't empty. It concealed a depth no one there could have imagined. The daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants, she had grown up amidst hardship, learning that silence was sometimes the only way to survive. On the noisy streets of the Bronx, where she spent her childhood, she discovered that the strongest aren't always those who shout, but those who know how to listen. And she heard every word, every gesture, every scorn that hung in the air in that luxurious mansion. Maria was calm, almost serene, but within her lay a universe of emotions that were never revealed. What no one knew was that in her small apartment, far from the eyes of the wealthy, there was an antique piano inherited from her grandfather. It was worn, out of tune, some of the keys no longer responding, but it was on it that Maria found her true voice. Every night after long days of work, she would sit before that instrument and let her fingers translate what words could never say. And herein lies the irony of life. In the face of the millionaire's arrogance, Maria possessed a wealth measured not in dollars, but in musical notes. It was an invisible treasure, a hidden talent, guarded with the care of someone who knew not everyone would be ready to recognize its beauty. That night, however, something different was about to happen. Richard Stone, in his insatiable quest to reassert power, made it clear with every gesture that someone there would be the target of his next spectacle of humiliation. And Maria, with her silent demeanor, seemed the perfect choice, too simple to react, too fragile to resist. But there was something in her gaze that no one noticed. A subtle, almost imperceptible gleam that carried the strength of someone who had faced much more than words of contempt. Maria didn't seek a stage, nor did she seek applause. She simply continued to fulfill her role until life decided to intersect her destiny with Richard's ego, and fate was not slow to act. Because while the glasses clinked and the conversations faded into frivolity, the millionaire was already plotting the cruel joke that, in his mind, would bring laughter. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to give Maria's silence the chance to become music. And when that happened, the night would no longer belong to him, The room glowed golden, while laughter echoed through the clinking of glasses and forced praise. Richard Stone, at the center of it all, seemed to once again enact his favorite play, that of the man who controls not only the room, but also the people within it. His attentive eyes roamed like hunters searching for prey. And then they landed on Maria Alvarez. She went almost unnoticed, discreetly balancing a tray, but for Richard, that anonymity was the perfect opportunity. With a lopsided smile, she caught the guest's attention, and in a tone that sounded generous but dripped with irony, announced, "Tonight will be even more special. We'll have music, and why not let someone improvise?" His eyes met Maria's, and the entire room immediately understood who he was referring to. A curious silence fell. Some guests chuckled, others simply looked at each other, as if awaiting the next act of already rehearsed cruelty. Maria, surprised, kept her eyes lowered, unsure if that was an order or a joke. Richard walked to the grand piano in the center of the room. He ran his hand over the keys as if about to play, but then theatrically stepped away. He gestured invitingly to Maria, as if offering her a gift. In truth, it was a trap. He wanted to see her fail. He wanted laughter. He wanted to transform the talent he assumed non-existent into a spectacle of shame. "Come on, Maria, show us what you know," he said, with a false tone of encouragement that sounded more like a sentence. All eyes turned to her. Some guests waited anxiously for a slip-up. Others felt uneasy, but no one dared intervene. After all, no one there would stand up to Richard Stone. Maria took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly, not from a lack of courage, but from the weight of the exposure. It wasn't fear of the piano. It was fear of evil, and this is where life reveals its sense of irony. What Richard expected to be a spectacle of humiliation was about to take an unexpected turn. Maria took a few hesitant steps toward the piano as everyone watched. The room, previously filled with laughter, fell into a tense silence. Each step echoed like a challenge. Maria knew she was being led onto a stage she hadn't chosen. But what Richard didn't know, and no one there could have predicted, was that this trap set to destroy her would turn into an opportunity to reveal who she truly was. And when her fingers finally approached the keys, fate began to write its own song. Maria Alvarez sat before the grand piano. The instrument that for Richard Stone was merely a status symbol, and for her a portal to her own soul. The hall lights reflected off its black and white keys, while the guests held their breath, awaiting the disaster they had been eagerly anticipating. Some even exchanged smiles of anticipation, certain that the humiliation was about to begin. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and remembered the silent afternoons in her small Bronx apartment, where she learned to transform pain and silence into music. Every note she had practiced in secret, every melody rehearsed to exhaustion, had been a silent preparation for this moment no one could have foreseen. The first touch was soft, almost timid, but immediately distinct. A clear note broke the silence, like a ray of light piercing the darkness, and then another and another. A melody began to form, light and captivating, shattering everyone's expectations. The whispers and laughter ceased, replaced by puzzled looks. What should have been ridiculous became extraordinary. Richard Stone, accustomed to controlling every situation, felt something he had never felt before: powerlessness. Every key Maria played seemed to undo his arrogance, as if each note were a silent response to his attempted humiliation. He realized that the power he so valued had no reach over something so genuine, so pure. Her music swept through the hall like an unexpected wind, touching even the most callous hearts. The guests, initially eager to see the floor, were now mesmerized. Each chord was a small revolution, each musical phrase a declaration that talent and dignity cannot be bought or subjugated. Compared to Richard's arrogance, Maria's piano seemed like a sword cutting through the veil of pretension, and it was at that moment that the first major shattering of expectations occurred. The millionaire who believed he had absolute control of the night now found himself completely at the mercy of the music of someone he considered insignificant. Richard looked around the room, observing the transformation in people's expressions, and realized the applause wasn't directed at him, but at her. With every note, Maria didn't just play the piano, she told her own story. A story of resilience, hidden talent, and quiet strength. Those who listened closely could see that each chord carried the memory of long nights, internal battles, and dreams that would never be contained. And then came the most powerful moment. The melody rose, filling the entire hall, and the air seemed to vibrate around them. Richard Stone, accustomed to being the center of attention, stood motionless, speechless, witnessing the effect his own arrogance had just wrought. What had begun as an attempt at humiliation became a demonstration that true greatness is not measured in money, status, or power, but in the ability to touch lives, even in the most adverse circumstances. Maria's first touch not only surprised the millionaire, but completely redefined the balance of power that night. And those watching felt the impact of something that went far beyond the piano. It was the silent victory of someone who had always been underestimated, a lesson no one in that room would soon forget. As Maria Alvarez's melody unfolded, something extraordinary began to happen. The room, previously filled with laughter and expectant whispers, became a space of absolute silence. Every guest, from powerful businessmen to socialites accustomed to controlling appearances, was completely absorbed. What should have been a source of derision became a spectacle of admiration. Richard Stone, the man who dominated with his gaze and words, couldn't look away. Every chord Maria played seemed to tear his arrogance into invisible slices. He realized that the control he had always exerted was illusory in the face of genuine talent. The irony was almost cruel. The instrument he had bought to flaunt his status now showed the world who truly held the power in that room. Not money, but the soul that knew how to create music. The melody intensified, rippling through the room with overwhelming emotional force. It was impossible not to feel the energy flowing from Maria, as if each note told her story of resistance, of silent struggle, of hidden dreams. Comparing Richard's arrogance to the delicacy of her hands, the difference became even clearer. He had riches, but nothing that compared to the depth of that unexpected talent. The guests exchanged surprised glances. Some couldn't believe their eyes, others were moved to tears. That moment was more than music. It was a demonstration that underestimating someone based on appearance or social standing is a fatal mistake. The reverent silence that fell over the room was proof that true power can't be bought. It must be manifested. And then came the climax. Maria played a sequence of notes so perfect, so charged with emotion, that it seemed to float above the hall. Each chord broke down invisible barriers. Each musical phrase lifted the listener's heart. What should have been humiliation became inverted humiliation. The millionaire, accustomed to controlling everything, remained motionless, unresponsive, his face etched with disbelief. At this moment, the video's audience's greatest expectation was shattered. Richard Stone, who had always felt invincible, was now completely silenced. The music not only silenced the millionaire, but redefined the power dynamics of that night. He no longer needed to utter words. His defeat was evident in the effect Maria had on him, and this is where you, the viewer, should reflect. How many times have we seen people being underestimated simply because of their position or appearance? How many stories of hidden talent could change the world if given the chance to shine? If you're feeling the intensity of this moment, like it right now, subscribe to the channel and comment. Have you ever witnessed such an unexpected turnaround? Because the story isn't over yet. What happened after this climax only reinforces the lesson. True talent is unstoppable, even in the face of the fiercest arrogance. Maria Alvarez's final chord was still echoing through the hall when something incredible happened. The looks that had previously carried expectations of laughter or indifference now transformed into genuine admiration. Every guest seemed to understand, almost instinctively, that they had just witnessed something rare, a display of pure talent that transcended wealth, status, and arrogance. The first applause came timidly, almost hesitantly, but it soon spread like a wave, reverberating off the golden walls, reaching even the furthest corners of the mansion. It was as if each clap recognized not only Maria's skill, but the courage she demonstrated in facing a stage she had not chosen. People who had never looked at her attentively now viewed her with respect and surprise. Richard Stone, standing beside the piano, watched in absolute silence. Every round of applause that wasn't meant for him eroded his arrogance and paradoxically reinforced the young woman's presence. The power he thought he possessed was slowly being transferred to Maria, without him being able to do anything to stop it. The irony was blatant. He wanted to dominate, but was dominated by art. Some guests approached discreetly, commenting among themselves on the maid's unexpected skill. Whispers of unbelievable and "who would have thought" rippled through the room. Even those accustomed to scenes of ostentation and spectacles of vanity were touched by the genuine talent on display before everyone. And here's another subtle lesson. One you, the viewer, should grasp. Underestimating someone based on their social standing or appearance can be costly. Maria, silent and humble, proved that true treasures are often hidden where least expected. The audience learned this firsthand, experiencing the power of something that couldn't be bought, forced, or faked. As the hall filled with applause and murmurs of surprise, Maria remained serene, almost shy. She wasn't seeking recognition, but she knew she had changed everyone's perception. The audience's reaction was, therefore, more than validation. It was confirmation that true talent doesn't bow down, doesn't sell out, and doesn't submit to the humiliation of others. And if you're thrilled so far, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below what you thought of this twist. There's still a lot to come, and history is about to show what truly happens to those who let their ego get the better of them. Richard Stone stood beside the piano, motionless as a statue. Each note Maria Alvarez played seemed to chip away at his pride, making it clear to everyone that the power he so cherished was ineffective at that moment. The arrogance that had once filled the room now transformed into an awkward silence, almost painful to observe. He had always believed he could control any situation, but here he was, powerless. The audience, previously tense, now looked at him with a mixture of surprise and respect for Maria, and each silent glance reinforced the lesson he didn't want to learn. Talent, dignity, and courage cannot be bought or humiliated. The millionaire was exposed, not with words, but with his simple presence before what he could not control. His silence was even more eloquent than any criticism or applause. Richard felt for the first time the weight of vulnerability, the same feeling he used to impose on others. Compared to the intensity of the music, his fortune, his properties, his social status, everything seemed small, useless, almost irrelevant. The difference between wealth and greatness had never been so clear. Maria, on the other hand, remained serene. There was no arrogance or vanity in her gesture, only the genuine expression of someone who has made silence and daily practice her strength. Every chord she played was a reminder that true greatness is not measured in money or titles, but in the ability to touch lives and transform moments. And for the video's audience, this scene provokes reflection. How often do we underestimate someone simply because of their appearance, social standing, or lack of recognition? How often does a person's silence conceal a talent that can change everything? If you're feeling the intensity of this moment, take the opportunity to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment. Have you ever seen anyone surprised like this? There are still the final chapters, and Maria and Richard's story will reveal the final lesson that no one in that room will forget. The night was over, but the impact of what happened in that New York mansion lingered. Richard Stone, accustomed to controlling everything around him, learned unexpectedly that not all power is real. Maria Alvarez, the underestimated young maid, showed that talent, courage, and dignity cannot be humiliated or bought. The lesson for us all is clear. Don't judge someone by their appearance. Many carry hidden talents, stories of overcoming adversity, and silent strengths that, when revealed, can transform any situation. Maria didn't need approval. She just needed the chance to showcase her true abilities. And in the face of Richard's scorn, she found the perfect opportunity to shine. This story reminds us that wealth and status don't guarantee respect, and that often those who seem invisible have the ability to change everything with a single gesture, a single action. Life is full of surprises, and true greatness lies not in titles or possessions, but in the essence of who we are and the impact we leave on the world. If you were moved by this story, please like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Have you ever met someone who surprised everyone in an unexpected way? Share your experience. Every story of overcoming adversity deserves to be heard, and Maria Alvarez's will certainly be etched in the memory of all who witnessed it. That night in New York was forever etched in memory. Maria Alvarez, the young maid, proved that talent, courage, and dignity can overcome any arrogance or financial power. Richard Stone, the millionaire accustomed to dominating and humiliating, was confronted with something he could not control: the truth of genuine talent. What began as an attempt at humiliation turned into a powerful lesson in respect, empathy, and recognition. For those of you who have watched the story thus far, the message is clear: never underestimate anyone, not by their silence or appearance. Each person carries within them a strength that can change the course of any situation, and sometimes the humblest have the power to transform moments and hearts in unexpected ways. If you were moved by Maria's journey and Richard's reaction, like it now, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts on this surprising turn of events in the comments. Also, tell us if you've ever witnessed a moment when someone underestimated, surprised everyone around them. Every story like this deserves to be known and celebrated. And don't forget, new exciting stories are coming. Click the bell to never miss a video, and keep following the channel to discover other moments that defy expectations, shatter prejudices, and show that true greatness lies not in what we have, but in who we